All right, guys. Objection handling masterclass. Here we go. Let's see. So here's the first thing I want to talk about, right? We have objections, right? In real estate, like, are you a realtor? I need to speak to my husband. I need to speak to my wife. I'm not in a rush, right? I don't want to work with a realtor. There's only three, and I want you guys to really understand this. There's when someone gives you an objection, there's only three meanings behind that. Money, right? I want to make more money or I want to save more money. I'm scared to work with you or I don't trust you. And the logistics just don't line up. What do I mean by logistics? Timeline, maybe they're not in a rush. They're not extremely motivated. There's a complication with selling the property and moving to the next property, etc. But when you get all these different kinds of objections, I want you guys to understand that most of them are just a smokescreen, right? Let me talk. Hey, look, Lexi, we've had a great conversation. I just need to talk to my wife about it over the weekend. Which objection do you think that is? Out of the three, can someone tell me?
Fear.
Fear and possibly logistics, right? Now, let's say somebody says, hey, look, I want to work with a family member. I got someone in mind. If we don't sell the property in 45 days, I have somebody in mind. I already have someone. Pedro, can you tell me which one of the three, which ones would fall into the category of I already have somebody else I want to work with?
Probably, I would say fear. Well, can be the three of them because it might be saving in commissions. They have a fear of not trusting anybody else, and it might be easy for them to work with someone they already know.
It's all three of them. Money, they have someone in mind that's going to do it for cheaper. They're scared to use somebody else that they don't know or trust. And logistically, they think that doing it on their own is going to be better and quicker. Our objective, guys, when we are going through these objections, and I have 5 examples laid out for you guys step by step, is to uncover the real objection. Until we get the real reason, we can't tackle it, right? If we're set on, let's say we get on a call and we have a great conversation, and at the end of the call, they talk about their partner, that they need to talk to their partner about it, and we don't know how to manage and overcome that smokescreen, we're not going to be focused on the objection of the partner, when in reality, it might be fear, and we can never tackle that. Or it might be money, and we can't tackle that. 3 main objections: money, fear, and logistics. It is our job to get through the initial smokescreen and get the truth. Here's how we're going to do it, okay? So the first part of objection handling, guys, very, very important, okay? This is a framework. Acknowledge and normalize. Somebody give me an objection real quick. Anybody, any objection?
Alexis, we already have a very close family member who's going to be listing the property for us. So thanks, but no thanks.
Hey, yeah, Matt, totally understand. That's obviously totally normal. And I'm actually glad that you guys have someone in mind in case that, I mean, hopefully it's not the case, but in case that things don't go as planned, I'm glad you guys already have somebody in mind. That's totally fair. Acknowledge and normalize. One very, very crucial part of this process, guys, would be what? Hear them out, listen, but what do I need to use? Colby, what do I need to use in order to properly acknowledge and normalize? Tonality, right? If Matt tells me, hey, look, I got a family member or friend that I want to work with, and I'm like, John, totally understand. That's not a problem. Let me ask you, right? I didn't acknowledge and normalize. I said, look, Matt, I totally understand. Obviously, right now, from the sound of this conversation, it sounds like you just want to obviously net the most amount of money. It's totally fair. And actually, I'm glad that you have somebody already in mind. And then you pivot to the second part, which we'll talk about now. But the most important part about acknowledging and normalizing is, number 1, being genuine, okay? Number 2, truly being in a state of conversation where you are listening to the prospect and you can genuinely let them know, hey, look, man, I hear you. And what Daniel said earlier, I hear you and I feel you. I'm in your shoes. That was a very good response, Daniel. I understand you. This part has to be genuine and real. If not, they're going to feel like you're just trying to handle an objection. Put yourself in their shoes. If you were a prospect and you were getting a bunch of calls or you were meeting with a bunch of agents and that wasn't your intention to do business with an agent, and every time that you gave a concern to that person, all you got back was objection handling or aggression without being acknowledged and being felt like you're in the right, how are you going to feel as a prospect? You're going to want to exit that conversation, correct? The whole point of objection handling and the art behind it is being able to neutralize and normalize the objection before tackling it. That way their guard is down. When you side with a human being, psychology states that their guard is going to go down and they're going to be at least open and willing to hear because you heard them. So they're going to be law of reciprocity. They're going to be okay with hearing you. Does this make sense so far? Step number 1, always acknowledge and normalize. I'm going to give you guys a few different examples of how to acknowledge and normalize. Step number 2, clarify and isolate. Somebody else give me another objection, please.
I don't want to pay a commission.
Hey, Anthony, totally understand. Obviously, it sounds reasonable that you don't want to pay a commission. Just so I get a better understanding, I'm assuming that at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, obviously you want to go ahead and be sitting at the closing table and obviously net the most amount of money from this transaction, right?
Yeah.
clarify. So just so I fully understand, I mean, is it really just a commission that would be holding you back in the case that you did sit down with an agent and they presented a much better strategy? I was going to be able to net you significantly more money. Is it really just a commission that would be holding you back at this point from even just exploring that? Isolate, clarify, and isolate. Okay. When we get an objection, we agree, acknowledge, normalize, right? And then we want to ask what's called a clarifying question. Somebody else give me another objection, please.
I have to speak with my partner about it.
Hey, Lexi, totally not a problem. That's totally fair. Obviously, real estate is a process, not an event. The last thing I'd want to do is go ahead and move forward on business and not have all of us on the same page. Just so I get a better understanding, you did mention earlier that your objective here is obviously to net the most amount of money. Just out of curiosity, obviously, would you say that your partner's on board with that? They also want to net the most amount of money? The objection, right? If the objection's commission or money, then we isolate it. Just out of curiosity, Lexi, to pick your brain here, if you did sit down with your partner and kind of walk them through the strategy that we're discussing now, and they also felt like we can net you guys significantly more money, do you think that'd be something they'd be completely against, or it's really just a commission that's holding you guys back at this point? Either the objection's going to move, oh, well, it's just that we already have somebody in mind, or we're just not in a rush, right? Either the objection's going to move elsewhere, which then you tackle that, or they're going to say, well, I mean, it's really just the money. So every time you guys get an objection, acknowledge, normalize, tonality, very important, clarifying question, clarify what they mean. And it's usually a reframe, right? Because somebody give me like a money objection in the FSBO or expired world.
Yeah, Alexis, we could potentially work with you, but we just already have someone who, they said they would do it for 1%. They have great reviews, and like we're really trying to make the most amount of money because we just had a baby, so it's there's kind of a lot of moving parts.
So what was the objection? Matt just said we're willing to pay 1%. That's what Matt said, right? What does Matt mean? Matt said I only want to pay 1% because I want to do A, B, C, and X, Y, Z. But Matt really means, can somebody tell me what Matt means?
Net the most amount of
I want to net the most amount of money. So, hey, Matt, totally fair. I totally understand. Obviously, it sounds like this is a sensitive situation. Just so I understand, I'm assuming from what I'm gathering, I could be wrong here. Obviously, your main goal is to position the property in front of buyers that's going to be able to help you guys net the most amount of money when it's all said and done, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just started a family, so we need every dollar we can get right now.
So that's me clarifying for Matt, because what Matt says is one thing, what Matt means is another. It's our job to clarify for them. Then find the objection, and like in math, you isolate it and you tackle it. Hey, Matt, so, obviously right now, I'm assuming that your main goal is to, net the most amount of money like we just agreed. Obviously, you had in mind doing this on your own. Just out of curiosity, if you did sit down with an agent that presented a strategy that was actually able to get you guys a significantly better result, is the commission really the only thing holding you guys back from exploring that option? Or is there an alternative reason that would prevent you guys from working with an agent?
No, I mean, I would be interested to see how that's even possible, like paying a commission and still making more money. Like everyone who I spoke to, who they sold their house on their own, they said that they felt like they made the most amount of money. So
right.
I'm not really sure.
So what do we just identify there in that scenario, guys? That the objection for right now is the money, the commission, but we isolated it. Now we can tackle that, right? And here's a tip. Once you have the objection identified, move away from that conversation. Don't try to just immediately tackle it. That's what I want to make sure I give you guys context on. Then you ask, okay, Matt, that's fair. And that's obviously something that I think we're both in agreement that's important to you. Just out of curiosity, kind of walk me through, if we did get you an offer that did make sense for the numbers you're looking for, what do the next steps look like for you guys? Pivot the conversation away from the objection and what they're thinking about the money, get their motivation, create the emotion, and then you can tie the two together. Okay. So far, so good. What's the first part of this objection handling sequence? Can somebody tell me?
Acknowledge and normalize.
Okay. Hey, Angela, look, man, I want to go ahead and, just take some time to really sit on this and just run it through my wife real quick. I want you to give me the first part. Acknowledge and normalize that.
Yeah, I totally understand. I would want to, have a conversation with my wife too before making any decisions. But if you guys are both on the same page and wanting to maximize and, getting the most amount of profit for the home, would you be open to having a 15-20 minute conversation?
Okay, perfect. We acknowledged and normalized. I think the separating factor, guys, that I want you guys to understand, we could just say, hey, look, Angelo, totally understand. That's totally fair. Or we could take it one step deeper and tell a story behind it, which you started to do, but you kind of stopped a little bit. This is going to be the separating factor. Angelo, give me the same exact objection.
Hey, Alexis, I think I want to talk to my wife before, we make any decisions before we even decide to work with somebody.
Angelo, that's 100% fair. At the end of the day, I'm sure that you and your wife sat down extensively to discuss selling this property on your own. And at the end of the day, I'm sure that you guys can both agree that, putting this property in a position where it's going to sell for the most amount of money is important. And truthfully, this is a process, not an event. The last thing I'd want to do is have you guys not on the same page and us obviously not being congruent. That's how you take acknowledge and normalize to a little bit of a next level. You tell a little bit of a story, you tap into their thought process. Hey, I know you guys obviously sat down, thought about this. Look, truthfully, real estate is an event, not a process. I completely understand and I'm with you. At that point, how does the prospect feel? Once you truly acknowledge and normalize the objection, they forgot about the objection. Now you have your opportunity to clarify and isolate. But if you just kind of run through it like most of us, hey, look, I totally understand, John. Let me ask you this. If you hit them with that, they know you're just in objection handling mode. The most important part about this framework is truly acknowledging and normalizing. Pretend like the other person on the other side of the phone is a family member or a friend. And for 1 second, take a second and a half, 2 seconds to hear what they're saying, process it, listen to it, then acknowledge and normalize. If you don't get this part right, the rest doesn't matter, because the prospect's guard has to be down before you can clarify and isolate and get the truth. If we don't get the truth, we can't tackle it. Acknowledge, normalize, clarify, and isolate. Let's go to this third part. Third part is tie down, motivation, and objective. Okay, can somebody give me another objection? We're going to start piecing this together.
Alexis, we just decided that we're just going to stay put. We don't want to sell the home anymore. We're pretty frustrated.
Hey, yeah, Matt, look, I completely hear you. It sounds like you guys have probably gotten a ton of these phone calls and you guys are obviously, frustrated. Just so I do get some clarity, if you guys did decide to put the property back on the market, just so I understand, is the commission really the one thing that was holding you guys back from exploring options that could get you guys the results you guys are looking for? Or was there an alternative reason that was maybe holding you guys back?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly the commission, like based on our experience thus far, like agents just throw it up on the market and hope and pray that a buyer's going to come along and they don't really do anything else to sell the house. So I don't see why I would want to pay a commission for that.
In this process, Matt just gave me another objection. So although I just isolated the objection, he gave me another one, which is realtors suck and have had a bad experience. So what do I have to do now? This is where it gets tricky. I have to go back to the top, agree, acknowledge, and normalize the other objection while still coming back to this one and tying down motivation and objective. Hey, look, Matt, I completely understand, and I'm actually with you. 95% of my colleagues are a pain to work with, so I completely understand your sentiment about not wanting to work with realtors. My understanding is, and just to get clarity on this, if there was a way to actually sit down with somebody that can prove to you to sell the property for significantly more money than you guys can sell it on your own and be able to get you guys efficiently over to Florida in a timely manner, is just re-exploring this idea something you'd be completely against? So that's tie down motivation and objective. Motivation is we want to move to Florida to get closer to grandkids. Objective is we want to do that while making the most amount of money. In order to tie down motivation and objective, we have to identify motivation and objective, correct? For those of you guys that have been with me for a while, what is one of the first things that we do on the phone call when it comes to fizzles or expireds? Find their motivation. We got to level their guard down, find a common ground, right? So we can have an open conversation and then ask them what the next steps look like in the case that we did bring them ideal offer and terms. Now, when we have the motivation, we can continue tying down that motivation and objective. Once we have the motivation and objective, we have our ammunition. The third part of this objection handling sequence is tying down the motivation and the objective together. How can we take step number 3? And I left it blank on purpose because I want you guys to brainstorm. Once we're deep into a call and we're looping around objections, how can we take step number 3 to the next level? What's one ingredient that we can add to tying down motivation and objective that can make the sauce work?
I mean, what I do is it's almost like normalizing it again, but I give them some sort of like empirical evidence of not only is it normal and common what they've gone through, but I've helped someone just like them before get the result that they're looking for. I'm like, hey, actually, everything that you're telling me makes me think of my client, Catherine, who actually just sold her property to be able to go to X. And we were actually able to get her, X more than the neighbors or, whatever the result was that stuck out in your mind. I use that to like not only normalize it, but then also you get them thinking like they're your client. Because if you got that result for someone else and then they had the same situation as them, then you're getting them into like buying mode effectively.
I love that. And that's something that we could add. What I was referring to, Matt, and this is something we do all the time, guys. Once you're looping around, if before you tie down motivation and objective, you reiterate their prior objections, you're bringing their guard down all over again. So instead of just looping around and continuing to tie down motivation and objective, you say, hey, look, Anthony, I completely understand. Obviously, you've told me and I hear you out. You don't want to pay a commission. You want to avoid realtors at all costs. And obviously, you guys are not in a rush. I completely hear you. Just so I get clarity, right? If we were able to actually present something in front of you that was able to get you guys over to Florida significantly quicker and efficiently, and also put you in a situation where you guys are sitting at the closing table in 30 or 45 days with significantly more money in your pocket, just so I understand that's something you obviously wouldn't even consider exploring, right? So that before we tie down motivation and objective, objective, we prevent the objections again. Because if you bring it up fresh in their mind and you say, hey, look, I hear you. You don't want to do A, B, C, or D. I get that. Just so I get clarity, we're clarifying again. Bring up the motivation. If we were able to get you to A, B, C, and X, Y, Z, and the verbiage here is very important, guys. If we were able to get you to A, B, C significantly more efficiently, right? And let's say, you know, you were sitting at the closing table and you were signing your closing disclosure, right? What is this? Storytelling. If you were signing your closing disclosure and once you popped that champagne bottle and you signed off on that wire, you had significantly more money in your pocket. Just to pick your brain, I'm assuming that's obviously something you wouldn't even consider, right? And then we end with a negative. Because instead of saying or asking, is that something you'd be open to, Mr. Seller? We just assume, right? Like I'm assuming, Tara, that's not something you'd even consider at all, right? If it made sense. That's how we put that sequence together.
Just wanted to add something. I completely agree with what you're saying on not only painting that picture, but also like almost like poking that, almost their pride, you know, because I've noticed that every single time that I use that line of like, are you close-minded? There's always a reaction of like, no, I'm not close-minded. And it works whether that's in text or on the phone, because I have tested both. And in both situations, people are like, no, I'm not close-minded. Almost like they take a little bit of an offense. It's just like, no, I'm not close-minded, but then they move on with the real objection. So it definitely makes a difference.
Correct. So imagine I was like, hey, look, Pedro, you know, based on this conversation, obviously, I know that right now you don't want to work with an agent. You guys have obviously had a bad experience. And also you guys are not in a rush. Just so I get clarity on my end. I mean, if there was a real way to get you over to Florida significantly quicker, and, you know, once you guys are signing at the closing table, you guys had significantly more money coming into your pocket, you know, based on what you're telling me, I'm already assuming that this is not even something you'd consider, right? You're fully closed-minded to this, even if it made more sense. Oh, no. I'm not close-minded. I wouldn't be close-minded to that, right? Now you got them. So I would say this sequence right here, guys, what's going to make this powerful, right, is tonality and storytelling. On top of what we're talking about, the mechanism, tonality, storytelling, and always preventing objections. How do we talked about this last week. How do people think? When we're talking and we're trying to explain something, how do people think?
Negative.
No. When you're at a presentation, right? And somebody's telling you a story, how do you imagine that story in your head?
You relate to them. You go into their shoes.
Right. But how do we imagine that in our brain?
You listen to it as a story.
Right, but when we're listening to, let's say Lucas, I tell you, that's Lucas, right?
Yeah, that's me.
Lucas, let's say I'm like, hey man, so I was, you know, when I was 5 years old, I was riding a bike down the street, and across the street was an ice cream truck that had this big red light on top. As I'm telling you this, how are you imagining this, Lucas, right now?
The ice cream truck with the big red light on top. You know,
in pictures, right?
Pictures, yeah.
Okay, so imagine if we're able to use the art of storytelling while managing objections, and we use the most powerful images that could touch the person's emotions the hardest. Throughout selling a property, think about the most stressful things that come with selling that property. Packing up boxes, moving furniture, removing family portraits, right? Those are some of the negative emotions that come with it. Dealing with the stress of the paperwork. If we're able to create stories around this and help them imagine pictures of this, it creates an emotional aspect to it. That's the negative side of it. Imagine if we're able to create a story where they start feeling and seeing the positive images. Closing table, closing disclosure, wire transfer, bank account, money, green. If we're able to depict this efficiently, right? Because we don't want to go on a rant on a cold call. But if we're able to depict this and they can imagine this, they're going to create an emotional feeling that we can then tie it with logic. In most cases, unless you're talking to an A player or an investor, you need to create some sort of emotion for them to logically have a reason to meet with you. If not, they're not going to want to meet with you because they don't have a reason to. Okay. So aside from what's on the screen, storytelling, tonality, preventing objections has to be an ongoing sequence. Has to be continued to be reiterated. You can't just tie down motivation and objective once. We saw with my small, and we'll do this in the role play, my small interaction with Matt, he was answering one question, and as he was answering one question, another objection came. So then I had to go to the top, acknowledge and normalize, clarify again, while still remembering the other objection and being able to tie down motivation and objective. So this takes practice. Key tip here, okay, before we get into examples, very, very important tip. Do not listen to what they say. Understand what they mean. Clarify, right? But if somebody tells you, hey, look, Alexis, right now, we've had a bad experience with an agent and we don't feel comfortable talking to agents. And if we did list with somebody else in the future, we already have somebody in mind. They're saying that they've had bad experiences and that if they do list, they have somebody else in mind. But what do they mean? Can somebody tell me?
It's fear. Keep it simple.
That's it. They're scared. Hey, Anthony, I'm scared. I don't trust you. I have no reason to give you an opportunity so we can do business together. I want to make the most amount of money. I want to make the most amount of money, but I'm scared. So when you understand what they mean, you can talk to that. Because now you're focused on the family friend, the member. Oh my God, is he a good realtor? Is he a bad agent? Like you start thinking about that and focusing on that when really what they're saying is, Anthony, dude, I'm scared, bro. I've put in a bunch of equity and hard work into this house. I'm getting all these calls from a bunch of scammy realtors. I don't trust anybody. And I want to make the most amount of money, man. This is my life savings in here. That's what they mean.
Do you ask them in that particular circumstance, do you ask them about their negative experience or no? Like tell you the story of what happened?
So if they mean that, right? If they mean that they have a bad experience, you want to clarify. It's like, look, Anthony, I totally understand that you've had a bad experience. To be transparent with you, I've been doing this for 4 years. I know we don't know each other. 95% of the transactions I've worked with and collaborated with another agent, I've had a terrible experience as well. I completely understand. I'm with you, right? That's acknowledging and normalizing truthfully.
Right.
Just so I get a better understanding, Anthony, obviously you don't want to sign with an agent or even work with an agent that's going to put you through that experience again. Just so I get clarity, is there anything besides the bad experience that would be preventing you from working with an agent that can prove to you that that experience wasn't going to happen and they were going to actually net you significantly more money? Or it's really just a bad experience holding you back? So I just clarified, isolated the bad experience. And now they're either going to say, it's really just a bad experience, Anthony, or they're going to move to something else. Hey, look, it's the commissions. I can't justify 6%. I can't justify that, right? Or my family, my wife has a cousin that's a realtor. The objection just moved. And then behind the objection of my wife has a realtor that's a cousin, what is that? Is that money, fear, or logistics?
All three.
I think that one's more logistics. Because if your wife has a cousin that's a realtor and she wants to give her the deal, that's a logistical thing. Could be some money, could be some fear. It's typically all three always. But the main leading one there in that objection is logistics. Go back to the top, acknowledge, normalize, clarify, isolate, tie down motivation and objective, cycle, 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 cycle. The important part in the loop, when you're looping through objections, is the genuineness and the art of storytelling. Because if you just read words off of a paper or a script and you're not genuinely involved in the conversation, it's not going to work. You have to be able to tell a story around it and have a conversation with a human being. But it's very important to get good enough at this, and it comes with repetition, practice into the role play, and more importantly on live calls, to listen, right, enough where you understand what they truly mean, not what they're saying. Because prospects are liars. Because if I say here, let's say I go, Rome, man, look, we're just truly not in a rush, man. I don't sell it. I really don't have to move the property. I took all these pictures of having 2 open houses next weekend, but we're not in a rush. If we listen to what they're saying, we would believe that they don't want to sell the house, but yet they're doing everything in their power to sell the house. So they're saying one thing, but what do they mean? What does that one fall under? I'm not in a rush. Don't need to sell the property. I'm going to do this on my own. I don't need a realtor.
Logistics.
It's all three, but it could be logistics and fear, mainly. So we have to clarify and reframe the question and how we interpret it. We have to reframe it for them so they can agree and acknowledge us as well. And we can start walking them down our funnel. All this makes sense. Does anybody need it? Yeah, for sure. Hit me with the question.
Yeah, what do you mean by logistics? I just want to verify. Like if somebody says, hey, my cousin is a realtor, what do you mean by logistics?
So logistics, right? The overruling the wife, right? Let's say the wife sat down and she's like, I really want to give Fulanita a chance. She just got her license. We can put some money in her pocket. We can save money for ourselves. It's money also, but it's logistics. Because now you're overruling the family member that you promised an opportunity to when they got licensed to give it to somebody that you don't know. That's logistics. Make sense? It's also the other too. It's fear as well of not knowing what the other realtor is going to provide, and money because that realtor is going to charge more. And they think that if they're not saving, they're not making. But that one mainly falls, in my opinion, under logistics, because you have to logistically talk to the wife, the cousin. You don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But at that point, Ron, it's very important to clarify what their number one priority is.
How would you tell a story with that objection, with like that logistics objection?
Hit me with the objection.
Hey, man, you sound like a great realtor, but the thing is, my sister, my sister's a realtor, and it would break her heart if I hired someone else.
Ron, that's totally fair, and I completely understand that. Obviously, you and your wife, I'm assuming, have priorities in this transaction, and I completely understand the fact that you don't want to hurt anybody's feeling. Just so I get a better understanding, and obviously, I'd love transparency here. That way, we're on the same page. Is it more important for you guys to get to Florida efficiently, and when you guys are sitting at the closing table signing those documents and having that wire transfer come into your account, is it important for you guys to have the most amount of money net, or would it be more important to make sure that you have your cousin as a realtor? Just so I get clarity on that.
I feel like she can do a good job, and we can probably do both.
No, I'm completely with you. See, back to the top. I'm completely with you. And obviously right now, that's the sentiment that you guys have. Just out of curiosity, Ron, let's say you did hypothetically sit down with somebody that made you guys feel, keyword here, made you guys feel that they were 110% going to actually bring you a significantly better result, get you guys over to Florida in a much smoother transition. At that point, are you guys more compromised to working with your cousin, or would you guys be completely closed-minded to exploring that option if it meant significantly better outcomes for you guys here?
We want the best outcome, but we're right now between it would be between a rock and a hard place, to be honest.
No, I'm with you, Ron. And again, and now we clarified for him. So now we have, okay, their priority is making the most amount of money. Because guys, the prospect doesn't know what they want. They know what they want, but they don't know how to vocalize that. So we have to constantly clarify for them, and then they can understand what they want. Because if Ron would have told me, hey, look, I don't care if I sell the house for 30,000 less, I'm going to use my cousin. I say, hey, Ron, just so I hear this correctly, you'd leave 30, 40, 50,000 hypothetically on the table if it meant working with your cousin, right? Just so I get an understanding. Either he says yes, or he goes, no, that's a lot of money. Hey, look, Ron, again, I'm just trying to be direct here to get an understanding of what your true goals are. I'm not saying I could accomplish this for you, but hypothetically in a situation that we were able to get you that better result and you felt confident about it, I'm assuming you wouldn't even consider having a conversation at this point, right? You're fully closed-minded?
I'd be open to a conversation.
And then boom.
I see what you mean, yeah.
Right? And something to keep in mind, guys, it's that you can't go into phone calls and situations with the approach of like, this is going to work every single time. It's not going to work, and you shouldn't want it to work every time, because back to our thought process of selective prospecting, we want to pick and choose our individuals that we work with, right? But the better you get at this framework, the more leverage you are going to have, the more in control you are going to be, and the better you can pick those clients. But I want to make this very clear. I don't know if any of you guys have ever read the book, The Science of Getting Rich. It talks about doing things in a specific way. If you don't use this formula in a specific way, it's not going to work. If you don't acknowledge and normalize and use the right tonality and tell the right stories around it, it's not going to work. If you clarify and isolate after you tie down the motivation and the objective, it's not going to work. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is I'm laying out the foundation for you guys. It's your job to go out there and implement it and try to perfect it. Because if you don't do it in a specific way, it's not going to work. It's very simple. Does this make sense so far?
Yes.
Okay. All right, let's start with some objections, right? And I'm going to give you guys, this is, something that I wrote out yesterday, just to give you guys different examples of different verbiages, and I'll point out some words that I find important. This is not an objection, by the way. This is a reaction, in my opinion. But this is one that we get at the beginning of almost every phone call, right? Are you a realtor? This is a reaction. Let me show you how we can implement this framework together, okay? Acknowledge and normalize. I am an agent, John. I do completely understand. You've probably gotten a ton of these calls. I'll be extremely brief and straight to the point with you. That's acknowledging and normalizing, right? That's one way to do it. Another way to do it, which is I've been flirting with it, I recommend you guys to flirt it with as well. When they tell you, are you a realtor, instead of being so serious, you can crack a slight joke to just kind of bring their guard down. Hey, Alexis, are you a realtor? Hey, John, look, it sounds like I'm obviously lucky caller number 9. I'm sure you've gotten a ton of these calls. I'll be extremely brief with you and straight to the point. I don't want to waste your time. But you chuckled a little bit. You gave it a spin. He maybe chuckled a little bit back. You guys listen to the radio, right? Caller number 9. You guys know what that is? Right? Yes. Hey, John, I'm assuming I'm not lucky caller number 9 here. I'm sure you've gotten a little chuckle, because what have we learned through the role play? A little chuckle and a smile behind the phone, they'll reciprocate. The second they smile and laugh, their guard will go down, immediately pick right back up, and go into agreeing, acknowledging, and normalizing. Okay, so let's run it back. Hey, Alexis, are you a realtor? John, look, I am an agent. I'm sure you've gotten 47 of these calls today. I'll be extremely brief. I want to get straight to the point with you. I obviously don't want to waste your time. Let's clarify and isolate. I do see you are selling the home for sale by owner, and I'm assuming your main objective is to net the most amount of money when it's all said and done. Would you agree? That's a tie down, number 1. I'm getting to say yes. So let's say he says yes. John, just so I understand, is the commission the only thing preventing you from working with an agent that can net you more money? Or would there be an alternative reason why you're choosing not to work with an agent, even if they were able to get you a significantly better result? Just so I understand. That's us clarifying and isolating the objection. Either John's going to say, no, man, it's just a commission. I obviously want to make the most amount of money, which then you can tackle, tie down motivation and objective if you already have it. Or what's going to happen? Can somebody tell me what's going to happen if it's not the commission?
The price.
Well, what does that mean? No, the price is money. Let's say he moves, right? And he goes, well, look, man, Obviously, we want to save money, but we already have somebody in mind if we were to go down that route. The objection moves. It's a constant game of finding the real reason. Once you find the real reason, I want you guys to hear me. Once you find the real reason, move away from it. Make them forget about it and go for the motivation again. Get layers into the motivation and the emotions once you have the real reason. If you don't have the real reason, what do you have to do? Find it. If you don't have the real reason, you're tackling something that's not true. Once you find it, you move away from it so that you can create the emotional gap. We have to do this, by the way, at the same time as being efficient because it's a cold call. Same, using those frameworks and techniques of like, hey, look, John, I'll be brief. And I know we've been on the phone for a little bit longer than expected. This is a side note. Whenever you guys feel the tension rising on that phone call and you feel like they're going to want to exit, you give them the exit. I want to reiterate that. Whenever you guys feel like they want to hang up or they feel tense in that call, you give them the exit. If they feel like they have the door right next to them, what are they going to do? They're not going to walk out the door. But if they feel cornered and forced, they're going to want to leave. Hey, John, and look, I know this call is going way longer than expected. I'm just trying to understand what it is that you're trying to tell me here, just so I get a better understanding. Go into the next clarification question. These little techniques on the side are very, very important. Push and pull, we've talked about it that many times. We'll talk about that here in a little bit. Let's run through this again. Let's say John says, look, it's just a commission, man. I just want to make the most amount of money. Okay, John, understood. Obviously, if you already knew somebody that could do this in a significantly better manner, I'm sure you wouldn't even be attempting this. You know, just out of curiosity, if it meant netting significantly more money and getting you guys over to North Carolina in a significantly more efficient manner, I'm assuming you're obviously completely against having a conversation with an agent at this point, right? Even if it made sense. End it with a positive. That's something I would have added there. End it with a positive. I'm assuming that's something you're completely closed off to, right? Even if it made sense and got you guys a better result. And then that's when you're either going to get another objection, which you go run it back to the top, or they're going to say, well, I mean, I'm not completely against it, right? When somebody says, let's run through this, right, real quick. I want to pick on somebody here. Victor, if I get to the point in the phone call where I go, hey, look, I mean, I'm not completely against that, Victor, but I mean, what would that even look like? What is the technique that we have to use there to keep going with our framework that we teach?
I mean, I believe that, you know, if they're looking to see what that looks like, we can always say, you know, I could obviously sit here and explain this over the phone. It does come down to marketing and sales, but you don't seem like the type of person that's going to make a decision over the phone, especially if you've never met with me. Am I right?
Correct. So what do we call that, Victor? You hit the nail on the head. What do we call that technique? When they lean in,
lean out. I mean, I don't know.
We lean out.
Right.
When they lean in, we lean out. What most agents make the mistake of doing is when somebody leans in, Victor, run me through, hey, look, man, what would that even look like?
Yeah, I hear you, Alexis. I mean, what are you going to do different? Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah, so Victor, transparently, you know, I'm with eXp Realty. We actually have 90,000 agents in the country. We have one of the most extensive marketing plans. We'll work with you on the commission. Obviously, I'll be at every single showing, attend every single inspection. We call every single prospect that looks through your property and views your home, and we'll be extensively thorough when negotiating a contract with you. But I'd love to explain that more in detail in person. When would you have time to meet? That's Victor leaning in and me leaning in again as well. When we lean in, they want to do what naturally? They want to lean back out.
Right.
So the further we lean out, once they lean in, they're going to continue to lean in. So it's a push-pull game. The entire conversation, they're leaned out, and we're trying to lean in to get them in. The second they lean in, we lean out. This is very important, guys. Whenever you guys get the engagement, you need to figure out a way to not say, hey, look, man, I don't want to work with you, right? This doesn't make sense because some of us overuse that. But it's very important to use that tactic of leaning out. Once Victor's engaged, it's like, look, Victor, I appreciate the fact that you're open-minded to this. Obviously, you mentioned to me how important netting the most amount of money is. I just want to be transparent with you. I obviously haven't even seen the property in person or met you. I obviously don't want to overpromise a result and then ultimately underdeliver. All I'd really like to do at this point, since I do identify an opportunity with your property, take a look at the property on the interior, have more of a detailed conversation with you and your wife, and see whether or not any of this would even make sense. I mean, does that sound fair? Does that sound completely unreasonable? Does that sound like a horrible idea? Right?
Oh.
What is another important part of that sequence there? Again, tonality.
Right.
You guys have to set aside time to practice tonality. Okay? Can somebody give me a different example of the Are You a Realtor? Let's see. Some of you guys have your cameras off. That's not fun. Let's start kicking you guys out of the room. You know, Anthony, are you a realtor? We'll go with Mosiegi. There's two Anthony's in the chat. Mosiegi, are you still there?
Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, are you a realtor?
Yeah, I'm actually a realtor. This is going to be very brief.
The whole thing. So remember, what's going to separate us is Anthony. Hit me with it.
Are you a realtor?
Yeah, Anthony, I am an agent. I'm assuming that you've obviously gotten like a ton of these phone calls. The last thing I want to do is waste your time. If it's okay with you, I'm going to be extremely brief and actually direct to the point with you. That's how we acknowledge and normalize that objection versus just, I'm an agent and I'll be very brief and then getting right into it. The separating factor is our ability to tone and words be able to genuinely acknowledge and normalize. So it has to be a little bit longer. John, I'm an agent, man. You sound extremely frustrated. The last thing I want to do is waste your time. I'm sure you've gotten 100 of these phone calls already today. So if it's okay with you, I'm going to be exactly direct and straight to the point with you. Is that fair? You can even add a question to the end of it. Is that fair? Yeah, that's fair, Alexis. What do you got? Clarify and isolate is the next one. Cole, are you a realtor?
Yeah, Alexis, I am a realtor. You've probably got a million phone calls, so I'll be extremely brief and straight to the point with you.
Perfect. Now, can somebody run me through the clarifying and isolating? Let's see, because I want to hear you guys' tone. Angelo, are you a realtor? Run me through acknowledge and normalize and clarify and isolate. I want to hear how you deliver it. Angelo, are you a realtor?
Yeah, I am a realtor, Alexis, and I'm sure you've gotten 100 other calls from other realtors, so I'll be brief. Just wanted to see if you'd be completely against, collaborating with an agent as long as we're able to bring you those net numbers you're looking for, even after closing costs and commissions.
Okay, so what do we miss here? We want to clarify. Hey, look, John, I do see you are selling for sale by owner, and I'm assuming, I could be wrong here, but your main objective is probably to net the most amount of money when it's all said and done. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah.
Because in the beginning of the phone call, the first thing we want to do is what? There's many ways to do this, but we want to find some common ground. Or we might go the entire phone call assuming it's the money and it's not the money, which is not typically the case. I would say 80 to 90% of the time, it's the money is the number one priority. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes people want to have like the right buyer. Have you guys ever heard this one? I want to make sure the right person buys the house. So in the beginning, we want to soft assume that it's the money. That way we get clarity that it's the money and we can tackle that. Or maybe it's something else. That's why we have to clarify. Right? Hey, John, look, I do see you are selling for sale by owner. That's another preventing objection, by the way. And I'm assuming I could be wrong. Your main, do you guys hear that little stutter right there? That's like, you guys have to perfect that. That's on purpose. Because if you sound like a robot reading through it, you're going to sound like a scripted person. John, I do see you are selling for sale by owner. And I'm assuming, I could be wrong, but your main objective is to net the most amount of money when it's all said and done. Would you agree? Yeah, I'd agree. Okay, I mean, John, just so I understand and get clarity, is the commission the only thing preventing you guys from working with an agent that can actually net you guys significantly more money? Or, is there an alternative reason why you're choosing not to work with an agent, even if it meant getting you guys a significantly better result? Just so I understand. You guys see the facial expressions, the curious tone? We're clarifying and isolating the objection. I clarified the objective, right? So I can get ammunition for the third part. And I isolated the objection. Either I'm going to get clarity that it's a commission or it's going to move, which then I have to tackle that. One more person. Brandon, run me through this. Are you a realtor?
Hey, Alexis. Yeah, I am a realtor. I want to be real brief with you. I know you've had probably a ton of these calls. I just want to get straight to the point with you.
I like that because this is something we have to practice hundreds of times, but you kind of were cracking a smile. Naturally, it made me want to reciprocate and give you a smile back and kind of lower my guard. Brandon, tell me, are you a realtor?
Hey, Alexis. I'm a realtor.
No, tell me if I'm a realtor.
Oh, hey, Alexis, are you a realtor?
Yeah, Brandon, I'm an agent. I don't know how you guessed that. I'm assuming you've probably gotten 47 of these calls in the last 30 minutes. So I'll be brief, man. I want to respect your time. I obviously, want to just get straight to the point with you. And the way that we decipher whether or not to use a little bit of a smile and a laugh or be serious is in the way that they deliver, are you a realtor? The only way that we're going to be able to pick which one to use is by experience. The more calls we take and the more we experiment, the more we're going to know whether or not to go with a little joke, a little smile to lower their guard, or if they're just an A-type player and we're like, look, man, I get it. You've gotten blown up. I don't want to waste your time. Is it fair if I just get straight to the point with you? And if it doesn't make sense, we just hang up? If it's like an A-player investor, you want to just get straight to the point. If it's somebody else, family, never done it before, truthfully, you guys are like, how could you tell that by the way they say, are you a realtor? Experience. If you do thousands of these calls, by the way they say, are you a realtor? You'll be able to know how to tackle that. Acknowledge and normalize it. Does this one make sense so far, guys? Who's still with me here? We got a few people here with the cameras on. We got others with the cameras off. All good. All right.
Quick question. Are we going to have
sir.
access to that the writing and stuff?
No. You guys can't have access to this. No. You guys got to pay me
No,
50 grand.
I was writing it down in my notes, but I would like to just
All of this is being recorded, and you guys will also get the deck as well.
Cool. Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Let's go to objection example number 2. By the way, this is taking a little bit longer than I thought, guys. If you guys are cool with it, right? We're cool with this. This is making sense so far. I'm going to keep rolling with this. Maybe speed it up a little bit so we can role play at the end. I already have someone I would work with, family member or friend. Okay, let's see how we tackle this. I'm going to read through it in its entirety, and then we break it down. Hey, look, John, I completely understand. I'm actually glad that you already have an alternative option in place in case things don't go as planned, which I obviously, hope will not be the case. You mentioned earlier, and it sounds like obviously netting the most amount of money from this transaction when it's all said and done is very important to you, correct? Yeah, that is important to me, Alexis. I mean, just so I get clarity, is the only thing preventing you from having a conversation with another agent the fact that you already have someone in mind, or is there really an alternative reason why you just want to do it on your own for now? He's going to either say, oh, no, we're really committed to this family member or friend, etc., which is probably not the case, right? They're more than likely going to say, I mean, we just want to save the commission. We just want to make more money, right? The objection is going to move, or they're going to give you fear. Well, we had a bad experience in the past with an agent. We obviously don't know who to trust. So we're going to try it this way on our own. And if it doesn't work out, then we'll go from there. But now you're getting closer to the truth. Let's say they go, oh no, it's just a family friend, right? Let's say they stick to that objection. Well, we're going to do it on our own. And if it doesn't work out, we're going to list 100% with a family friend. That's completely fair, John. I mean, my question then is, and I'll be direct with you if that's fair. If there was an agent, hypothetically, and I'm not saying it has to be myself, but if you did meet with someone and they proved that they were actually a significantly better option and we're going to 110% net you significantly more money and get you guys done to Florida in a much more smoother way, I mean, that's obviously something you wouldn't even consider as an option at this point, right? I'm assuming you're fully closed-minded. You guys see how that works with tonality? Versus... That's completely fair, John. My question then is, and I'll be direct with you, if there was an agent, and I'm not saying it has to be myself, but if you met with someone and they proved that they were a significantly better option and we're going to 110% net you significantly more money, if you go down that path, it's not going to work. But if you guys get really good, and the only way you're going to get really good at it is by practicing it. I mean, that's completely fair, John. I guess, my question then is, and I'll be extremely direct with you if that's fair. If there was an agent, and I'm obviously not saying it has to be myself, but if you did meet with someone and they proved that they were actually a significantly, notice how I emphasize that word, a significantly better option, and we're actually going to net you guys 110% a better net number than you guys can net yourselves. I mean, I'm assuming that at this point you're completely closed-minded to that, right? The difference is in the tonality, guys. So I'm going to throw someone under the fire right now to run me through a subjection. And don't read. I want you guys to just go off of what you got, acknowledge, normalize, clarify, isolate, tie down motivation, and objective. Let's see here. Hey, look, Ron, man, I get it. Obviously I get a ton of these calls. I could appreciate you. The case that we don't sell it, we're just going to go ahead and use a family friend, man, to be honest.
No, I completely get it, Alexis. And I think it's great that you do have someone that you have someone just in case, you're not able to sell it on your own. But just for clarification, if you did have an opportunity to sit down with someone that proved to you that they can sell the property for more than what you can sell yourself or that other agent could, I mean, would that be something that you'd be completely opposed to taking a look at this point?
Great tonality, great acknowledge and normalized, but we skipped the clarify and isolate. I know you're driving, bro, so it's tough, but it's right. But I wanted to kind of pick you so you wouldn't be able to read and just give me what you got off the dome. It's important to do this framework in the specific way every time. Okay, acknowledge, normalize, then we have to clarify and isolate because then we reiterate their objective, right? It's like, look, Ron, I completely get it. Obviously, you want to work with somebody that you trust, I'm assuming. And hopefully that's not even the case. Hopefully you get to sell this property on your own. You did maybe remove the word but, Ron. If we don't have to use that word, let's not use it because it's negating. It's negating what you're saying and what they're saying. I mean, John, you did mention early, and obviously from what I gathered, I could be totally wrong. It sounds like making the most amount of money and putting this property in a position where it sells in an efficient manner is something that's significantly important to you, right? Would you agree?
Yeah.
Just clarify that, right? So, let me ask you this. If there was actually a way to get you that result in a significantly better way, is really the only thing holding you guys back from exploring other options the fact that you guys have a family member in place? Or is there an alternative reason that's kind of just making you guys a bit hesitant from exploring options? Isolate the objection. Is it this or is it that? Is it this or is it that? When you find the truth, you can then use ammunition, the motivation and the objective. Motivation is what they want to do. Objective is how they want to do that. They want to go to Florida with the most amount of money. They want to go to Florida quick. Does that make sense?
So just to clarify, from what you said before, it looks like making the most amount of money is the most important thing to you and your family, right?
I mean, yeah, of course. I mean, obviously we want to make the most amount of money. But you see now
All
how
right,
the
so-
energy shifted from an objection to I'm thinking about making the most amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm feeling it and thinking about that. That's how
And
we
then
move their thought process away from the objection. We acknowledge, normalize it, and then when you go and clarify, you're bringing them back to their objective. So now they're thinking about the objective. And now you can isolate it, find the truth. Once you find the truth, you can use their motivation and their objective to present the scenario. Make sense? Run us through it again, Ron. Hey, look, Ron, man.
Wait. Before you do it again, after because I'm driving in this rain, so I'm a little distracted. So after I clarify that they want to make the most amount of money, and I'm isolating it, I'm like, okay, it's either this or that. It's like, can you run me through that part again real quick? Because I don't have the screen in front of me.
Yeah. So let's say you haven't found the truth yet. Let's say you haven't found the real objection and you're trying to dig into it, right? So let's say they right off the bat hit you with, look, man, I got a family member I'd work with. That's what they're saying. What do they mean? Hey, look, Ron, I completely understand. I'm actually glad that you already have an alternative option in place in case that things don't go as planned. I mean, hopefully that's obviously not the case. You mentioned earlier, and I mean, I could be wrong here. It sounds like the number one priority for you guys in this transaction is to obviously position the property in front of the best buyer and net the most amount of money possible, correct?
Yes.
That's me clarifying, right? Just out of curiosity, and I'd love to pick your brain on this. I mean, is the only real reason why you guys aren't exploring other options the fact that you guys already have somebody in mind? Or is there an alternative reason that would be preventing you guys from just looking at other options that may be able to get you a significantly better result? Just so I understand.
Okay, I think I got you.
Oh, no, Alexis, it's just a family friend because we have a commitment to our cousin that we said if it didn't work out, we'd list with them, right? Now we tackle the truth because they do have somebody that they have in mind. When it's not the truth and you ask this question, they're going to change. They're going to say, no, I mean, dude, we just don't want to pay a commission. Like, that's too much money. That's the truth now. Or they're going to say, I mean, dude, truthfully, like we just had a bad experience and we just don't want to work with an agent. We want to do it on our own. I have an investor. I have experience, right? Now we tackle that truth. Until you find the truth, you have to continue clarifying and isolating. Once you find the truth, you no longer have to isolate because you know the truth. You just continue tackling the truth. Make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So like, let's say I already knew the fact that, let's run the scenario, right, Ron? If it's cool with you. Let's say I already knew that the truth was you really just wanted to make the most amount of money. And at the end of the conversation, you just all of a sudden threw out that you had a family member or friend. Tell me that objection. I'll tell you how I handled it in that situation.
Okay. Yeah, man. I mean, at this point, if all else fails, I do have a family member that'll help at the end of the day.
Hey, look, Ron, that's totally fair, man. I'm actually glad that you do have a plan B. Obviously, I'm assuming that you're hoping this is not the case. And I do think you can actually get the property sold on your own. You know, you mentioned earlier to me that there is a high level of importance to obviously sell the property and net the most amount of money. Is that correct? Is that something that would obviously be important to you guys?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, what I'm going to skip here is isolating. I clarified. I'm going to go straight to tie down and motivation because I already know that it's the money. So I'll say, hey, Ron, look, obviously, you know, best case scenario for you is selling this property on your own without having to talk to another agent. You know, just so I get an understanding, if there was a way that somebody sat down with you and you felt actually 110% confident they were going to get you a significantly better result and get you to Florida in the snap of a finger, I mean, you'd obviously be completely closed-minded to sitting at the closing table with another 30 grand in your pocket, right? That's not something you'd even consider.
I definitely consider it.
Boom.
30 grand. Yeah.
But what I skipped there was the isolation because I already knew what the truth was. Very important because if you just go isolating, you're just confusing the prospect and yourself. So I wanted to make that example because once you already know the truth, it's acknowledge, normalize, clarify, tie down, motivation, objective. Until you have the truth, you have to isolate to find the truth. Does this make sense?
No.
Everybody good? Because I can't hear you guys. Everybody good? Does this make sense?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Let's go to, hey, look, Victor, you're going to have your buyer pay the commission. Okay. Look, John, I totally understand, man. I can obviously see why you'd want us to have our buyer pay our side of the commission so you can save the money. That obviously makes total sense. Let's go back really quick to what they're saying versus what they mean, right? Anthony.
Yeah.
I'm going to butcher your last name, bro. You told me the other day. Chekalenko, right?
No, you got it.
Chekalenko. So if I tell you Anthony, right, I want your buyer to pay the commission.
Mhm.
That's what I'm saying. What do I mean?
I want to net the most amount of money.
Correct. Because if we say that we want your buyer to pay the commission. And you're like, well, you know, John, typically the buyer doesn't pay the commission. Typically it's the seller. Now we're engaging in bullshit.
Right.
Now we don't understand what they mean. But when we understand what they mean, we can then clarify and say, hey, look, you know, Anthony, obviously I'm assuming that from what I'm gathering, I could be totally off here, but I'm assuming that besides everything else, you know, you do just want to put yourself in a position where you have an offer in front of you that puts you in a situation where you're netting the most amount of money. Am I hearing that right? Now you just took it from, I want your buyer to pay the commission to do that. I just want to make the most amount of money. That's why us clarifying is so important, right? So I go, hey, Anthony, hit me with the objection. I just want your buyer to pay the money, the commission.
Hey, Alexis, I appreciate the call, but really I'm not interested in paying any buy side commissions. You know, if you got a buyer who's want to pay my commission, you can bring them through. That's fine with me, but I'm not looking to pay any commissions on the buy side.
Yeah, John, that's totally fair. I completely understand. I obviously can see why you'd want us to have, you know, our buyers pay the side of the commission so you can obviously save the money. That makes obviously total sense. Just so I make sure I'm understanding correctly here, from what I'm gathering, it does sound like the overall goal, and I could be totally off, but it sounds like the overall goal here is to obviously walk away with the most amount of money net when it's all said and done, right?
That's correct.
Okay. I mean, just so I get a full understanding, and I'll be brief here. I know this is probably going on longer than you thought. Is there anything that would be preventing you from working with an agent that can net you a significantly higher result, or it's really just the commission that you're trying to mitigate at this point?
It's really the commission. You know, I don't, you know, I've worked in the past, and you know, I just don't feel like they're really, you know, I just feel like they're overpaid tour guides, and I don't see it being, you know, it being worth the commission.
So we have the commission, but we also have right there subliminally the fact that they don't value realtors. So we want to tackle that. Here's how we're going to do it. John, that makes total sense. I mean, just out of curiosity, it sounds like obviously what's most important to you, and I know right now doing it FSBO seems like the obvious way. If you actually met with an agent that, you know, made you feel like they were going to go ahead and put a proactive plan in place and strategy that can generate you a significantly better result and actually get you guys over to Florida in a much more efficient manner, I mean, that's obviously something you'd be completely against, even if it meant significantly more money, right? You wouldn't even consider it.
I mean, when you put it that way, it seems like something that I should consider.
Okay. And look, I want to be transparent with you. I obviously don't want to guarantee you anything. This is me leaning out. I obviously don't want to guarantee you anything. I haven't even seen the property in person yet. I do see that there's an opportunity here. And it sounds like, I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important would you say it's for you to net the most amount of money here?
A 10.
That's me going down in layers now. Okay, now I just tied down his motivation twice. Now I have 2 confirmations. So, I mean, all I really propose at this point, Anthony, it sounds like you're obviously not in a rush and you don't want to work with an agent, and you obviously want to have as little commission as possible paid. That's me preventing objections. But it does sound like the overall objective is to net the most amount of money and get over to Florida in a timely manner, right?
Yes.
Okay, I mean, would it be the worst idea in the world? I do have some time tomorrow on Tuesday and Wednesday. Would it be the worst idea to just kind of sit down and have a quick conversation and get a really, you know, a better understanding of what your goals are and see whether or not what I've done in the past for other families in your same situation would even work for you? Is that an idea that's completely off the table?
No, not at all.
Boom. You guys see how that works? Let's go to the next one here. We got a little
Really
time.
quickly.
Yeah,
like we're
man.
going through a bunch of different objections. Before you start to respond to those objections, you're just bringing up past things like you don't want to work with a realtor, or, you know, you obviously want to do for sale by owner, you want to save on commissions. You're getting a bunch of calls. That's the buildup, and then you respond.
Correct. Once you're tying down motivation and objective, you want to make sure you bring up everything they've told you as an objection. What is that going to do? It's going to neutralize them. Because, okay, shit, Victor's hearing me out, man. Victor understands what I'm saying. If you just keep looping back around and you just try to get, hey, but look, what if I can make you more money? Would you sit down? What if I could do it faster? Would you sit down? It's like, you're not hearing me, bro. I don't want to work with an agent. I don't want to pay commission. I'm not in a rush. You're not hearing me. But if you tell them, look, Victor, I hear you, man. You don't want to pay commission. You're obviously not in a rush. You've had a horrible experience. I get it. But from what it sounds like, you're telling me obviously on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 10 for you to net the most amount of money, right? So boom, tie down motivation and objective. Make sense? Yeah.
Quick question, Alexis, because I know on the previous objection, you raised something that really caught my attention. You said that if you have already clarified what the thing actually is at some point in the conversation, and you know that, and now they're throwing something else at the end, would you say that's like a smoke screen and not?
Yep.
And would you say that like knowing the difference between what it really is and a smoke screen would allow you to like really be more like precise?
100%. 100%. That's why finding out the truth is so important. So let's say you give me, let's do it again, Ron. Give me a smoke screen at the end. Let's say I already know that the truth is that you want to make more money. Give me a fucking smoke screen. Like, give me the partner objection.
Yeah, yeah. So how about we try a different one? Because they do get
Whatever,
creative.
whatever you want. I just want to show you how it works. Whatever you want. That's a smoke screen to the money.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, man, I get what you're saying. You sound like a smart guy, man. But like at the end of the day, for me, I feel like I can do it on my own, and I don't think you guys are worth the commission.
Yeah, no, Ron, I completely hear you. I actually agree with you. I think that you can 100% do this on your own. I'm just kind of holding up a mirror here and going based off what you're telling me, just so I get clarity. I mean, you did say it's important for you to net the most amount of money, but just so I'm clear, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is that actually to you, to making sure that you do sit at the closing table when it's all said and done, signing off a wire to your account that has the most amount of funds? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 10, how important would that even be?
Be a 10 out of 10.
Okay, just out of curiosity, and again, obviously this is a hypothetical scenario. You could sell it on your own, but if you did meet with an agent that proved to you that working with them was going to get you that significantly better result, I mean, I'm assuming that's not even something you'd consider, right?
I mean, I would consider it, but I mean, it's hard to come across a good agent at this point.
And I'm totally with you, Ron. I don't want to sit here and tell you that I'm the best agent to work with. All I'm going is, again, based off of what you're telling me, it sounds like it's extremely important for you to net the most amount of money. And from what you just told me, it sounds like you are open-minded to seeing if there is actually an option that can do that out there for you, right?
If there is, I mean, I'd take a look at it.
Okay. I mean, would it be the worst idea for us to sit down, again, just 20 minutes and really explore? Because I don't know if I do want to take the business myself yet. Would it be the worst idea to maybe pass by tomorrow in the afternoon, maybe, I don't know, 3:30 or 4:30, just have a conversation with you, Ron, and more importantly, see what it is that you're really looking to accomplish with the property. And then I'll tell you transparently whether or not, if it makes any sense. You wouldn't have a problem with me telling you the truth, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to give the property away. You know, obviously, it would have to make sense, you know?
Right. So I guess my question is, Ron, if it meant selling it on your own for 10 to 12% less than you can sell it with an agent, you're obviously not going to do that, right?
Yeah, I don't want to give you some like a large commission to like give the property away.
I guess let me ask you this, Ron. I mean, let's say you had two offers, right, side by side. One had a commission of 6% and one had no commission. But the offer that had 6% on it, your net numbers were 20% higher. Which offer would you take? Just out of curiosity.
The one that would net me the most?
I mean, right, but that's obviously an extreme situation. I guess just so I get clarity, Ron, is your main objective to pay less commission or to make sure you net the most amount of money after all the costs? I'm confused.
I want to net the most.
Okay, if you don't mind me asking, Ron, why would it be so important for you to net more money? Because I typically work with some sellers that are okay with making good money, but also have other priorities. If you don't mind me asking, why would it be important for you to net the most amount of money?
Hey, man, it's all about the money. You know what I mean?
So now I'm going in layers, right? I found the truth, holding the truth, digging into the truth. But you guys got to understand the reverse engineering that I'm using in the words. Instead of saying, Ron, I mean, let's do it. I mean, it sounds like you're open to it. Let's go ahead and meet. I'm saying, Ron, I mean, even if it meant getting more money, and you're telling me it's important to you, but I'm assuming based on what you're telling me, you wouldn't even consider that, right? If it meant significantly more money, you're completely against it?
No,
Go ahead, Ron.
that question is like a double negative. It can be a little confusing. Like, would you be completely opposed?
That's why we got to practice it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Keyword tip here, guys, as well. These double negatives and stuff like that, these tactics really only work on people that don't know what we're doing. If you're talking to an investor, a savvy person that sounds like they're a player and they really know what they're doing, you got to be straight to the point with them. But when you're talking, that's why it's important to do this and get experience. When you're talking to somebody that's a family, they've never done it before, they're a bit more naive, and you pick onto that, you can use the double negatives because they don't know what you're doing. But if you talk to a guy that sold 50 houses in his life and he's a salesperson, he'll know what you're doing. So I'd rather just say, look, Ron, I'll be straight with you, man. If it meant getting you another 50 grand in your pocket and helping you buy back more of your time so you can find the next deal, are you open to it or not?
Yeah.
You see the difference? That's how I tackle it. You're a smart guy. You can do this on your own. You obviously know that. Does it matter to you to have another 50 grand in your pocket? Yes or no? Because if the answer is no, bro, I'll stop wasting your time and I'll hang up. That's it.
I'll be honest, like if somebody were to talk to me like that, like a double negatives, I would be pissed off, bro. I'd be like, bro, get to the fucking point,
well, that's
bro.
because you know what we're doing because you train on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
So if I pick up that you're a smart guy, I'm going to be like, look, Ron, I'll be straight with you, bro. You're getting a ton of these calls. How important is it for you to net the most amount of money? Because if it's not that important, it doesn't make sense for us to keep talking.
Yeah.
Oh, no, it's important. Okay. Can I ask you why that's important? Because of X, Y, Z. Okay, great. So if it meant putting significantly more money in your pocket, I obviously can't guarantee that yet. But if you're open-minded, all I propose is to sit down, 20 minutes, have a conversation. If nothing makes sense, I'll just walk out, man. Does that sound fair? So you got to know when to use the approach. Okay. Let's see. We have I'm going to skip through this one and I'm going to go to the I need to talk to my partner, because I think a lot of us struggle with this one. And this is not an objection, guys, by the way. This is a smokescreen. What is the real reason behind this objection? The main one.
They don't want to commit over the phone.
So what does that mean?
Fear.
Fear.
Fear. Right? So how do we tackle this as well? Hey, look, I had a great conversation, Ron. Before we confirm the appointment, I just got to talk to my wife about this, right? Let's go through this. Hey, look, that's totally fair, John. Obviously, this is going to be a process and not an event. Having everyone on board is definitely something that is necessary to even get to the finish line. Just so I get more clarity and can obviously, tell you whether or not it can even help. If you did run this conversation that we had by your wife and shared with them that there would be an opportunity to net significantly more money by using the right agent, I mean, is that something they'd be completely against in your own opinion? No, they wouldn't be against that. Okay, that makes sense. So look, let's do this. Here's what I'll propose, John. Obviously, I know that right now you don't want to commit to an agent. That's fair. You obviously want to do this on your own. But it sounds like, and just to confirm, like obviously netting the most amount of money is important to you, right? Right. So we don't even know if any of this would make sense. Let's go ahead and do this. Let's pencil something in tentative. That way we put something on the calendar where the three of us can sit down and go over the information I have to share. More importantly, get a clear picture of what you and your wife are looking to accomplish and see if any of that would make sense to engage in. Is that fair? Yeah, that's fair. If at any point your wife changes her mind, doesn't want to meet, shoot me a text. That's okay. But let's go ahead and book something tentative. I'll go ahead and prepare information on my end, and I'll plan on seeing you guys on Tuesday at 5. Does that one make sense? The I need to talk to my partner is a smokescreen. It is not real. They are scared. They don't want to commit. So you need to give them a soft commitment. Tie down the motivation and objective. Look, man, let me ask you this, man. Obviously, I'm assuming you and your wife sat down and obviously game planned this whole thing out. You guys could obviously sell it on your own. I'm not saying you can't. If it meant getting you, your wife, another $30,000 to $40,000 in your pocket and getting you guys to Florida in a much more efficient manner, I mean, she'd hate you for that? Just out of curiosity? No, she wouldn't hate me for it. It's done. It's over. Now you're back to the money or the fear or the logistics. Let's see. Who can I pick on here? Pedro, look, I like it. I like what you have to share. I don't want to commit to a meeting right now. I got to run it by the wife.
Yeah, Alexis, I totally understand that. I mean, if I were being in your position, I would probably do the same with my wife and talk to her about this. But just so I can get a little more of clarity on what you guys are trying to do, because based on what you're saying, it sounds like you both already have a conversation as far as like trying to net the most amount of money on the selling of these houses.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we're both on the same page. We obviously want to make the most amount of money here. Yeah, for sure.
So do you think your wife will be against having a conversation about possibly netting more money on the selling on this house?
I mean, she wouldn't be against it, man, but I definitely just got to let her know.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So why we don't do this, man? Because like I said, I don't know if at this point it will even make sense for us to work together. I still have to do some of my due diligence and make sure that I provide you with the right information. But why don't we put something tentatively on the calendar? That way I can start working on this, and so we can meet the three of us and have this conversation, shake hands, and like I said, if any of these make sense, we can talk about the next steps. But in the meantime, let's just put something on the calendar, because I live and die by the calendar. I want to make sure that I have that time blocked for you guys. And if anything changes, well, just let me know. We can just change it. But for now, would you be okay with putting it on the calendar?
What is one thing that we were missing there, Pedro? At the end, that was perfect, bro, tonality, everything. What is one thing that we could have done better at the end?
I forgot to add with Wednesday or Tuesday.
No. Hey, look, Pedro, let's go ahead and do this, man. Let's tentatively put something on the calendar. I completely understand. Obviously, you guys are looking for a way to put the most amount of money in your pocket. Just to kind of paint a picture here, I mean, if you and your wife sat down at the closing table and had another $30,000 that you didn't expect in your pocket net, and you guys had all the logistics taken care of getting to Florida, I mean, that's obviously something you guys would be open to, right?
Yeah.
Motivation, objective. Get it there, tie it down, remind them, bro. Remember, they're going to be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's what I want to do, right?
Yeah.
Motivation and objective. Another thing that you guys can do to take it that was really good, Pedro, one level further on the partner objection when you're talking to the husband, you got to sell him the frame. It's like, look, man, no, if there was a way, and I'm going to ask you this transparently, Pedro, if you were guaranteed to make another 10% on the sale, would you go ask your wife for permission, or would you come home the hero and say, I found somebody that's going to make us 10% more. Let's go on vacation when this is all said and done. Would you ask for permission, or would you just go ahead and do it? You just go ahead and do it, right? So obviously right now you have no idea whether or not I can do that. But the idea of getting that result might be something worth exploring. So why don't we go ahead and do this? Instead of you asking your wife for permission, why don't you go and let her know that you spoke to an agent that might provide an opportunity you guys might not have otherwise? If anything doesn't make sense on our meeting on Friday, you're obviously not going to do anything with us, right? That's how you take it one level further. Conviction.